we can challenge some of these norms around, well, how do we define success? How do we define what ambition is? And I think that's where I'm inviting people to really reclaim that and to determine what is work and what is worthy work and what is worthy of your effort. I talk about this idea that there's a U curve of ambition, similar to the U curve of performance, where if your ambition is too low, you can get into this, what I call stagnant zone. If your ambition is too high and you're driving hard all the time, or you're in this unproductive sense of striving, you can get into the severe zone. And so it really is about, well, how do I dial in my ambition to be kind of the right level so that it is sustainable for myself? I think why people can often get tripped up with work-life balance and that concept is that they think that, oh, I'm supposed to be in balance all of the time. And yet, again, there's going to be intense time periods. That's a reality of life and how our life and work together. And so are you thinking about a broader time horizon, 12 to 18 months, and kind of ascertaining when am I going to take those downtimes and when am I going to give myself those breaks so that I can keep myself sustained over time?
That's Kathy Oneto. She's a consultant, facilitator, and coach who helps ambitious professionals explore how to live and work differently for more success and satisfaction. She's also a podcaster and author of the book Sustainable Ambition: How to Prioritize What Matters to Thrive in Life and Work. So you'll learn 1, the major myths surrounding ambition; 2, how to overcome inertia to achieve your goals; and 3, how to keep your energy up for the long term. And if you want a quick summary write-up of these actionable takeaways, I recommend you sign up for the free Gold Nugget email newsletter found over at awesomeatyourjob.com. I'm Pete Mikaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. Now, here's Kathy. Kathy, welcome.
Hi, Pete. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk about sustainable ambition. Great title. Seems like something we're into here. But could you kick us off by sharing a particularly surprising and fascinating and or counterintuitive thing you've learned about folks and ambition from all of your consulting, coaching, facilitating years and many, many clients?
This is the thing I'm going to start with, which is often where I end, which is to remember that we're human. Mm-hmm. And that it's both natural as humans to be both ambitious and to have goals. It's not a bad thing. We're wired to do this. And also in our pursuit of ambitions that we don't always get it right and that we stumble along our way. And that's the life journey. And to really, in this journey, to be generous with ourselves as we navigate the ups and downs of pursuing what we want for ourselves and our lives.
Mm-hmm. And so is it your observation that we tend to not do these things? We either vilify ambition itself or harden ourselves as we over or underdo it?
You know, ambition in our society can have a negative connotation. And so for some of us, we can be judged when we are ambitious. But what can also happen is that even as ourselves as individuals, we often define ourselves as a character trait around ambition. And what can happen over time is that our ambition ebbs and flows, and people are often surprised by this, and it throws them off, and they start to judge themselves around this. And there's a lot of angst that is associated when our ambition ebbs and flows like this, when it goes up and down. And I think what I'm wanting for people is just to embrace a little bit of, yes, this is part of our human nature. We have these different tendencies that tug and pull on us. I'd like people to find a little bit more joy, peace, and ease in this journey as they navigate their ambition over time.
Yeah, well, joy, peace, and ease are things I'm into. Thank you. And you're right. Like, I don't think I've ever really stopped to ponder this point until now. So thank you. This is valuable already because I'm thinking, it's so funny. Ambition can be perceived as positive or negative by different people at different times and ourselves at different times. And then it just kind of gets you one. So many things are popping up here for me. So I'm thinking, so we have the old aphorisms like, oh, the early bird gets the worm, as in, oh, that's a good thing. You want to be up early to get worms. Otherwise, as a bird, you will starve if you don't. So you should hustle. And there's this hustle culture, like, yeah, that's cool. But then there's also the backlash against hustle cultures, like, no, guys, big tech is just pulling the wool over your eyes. They want you to think hustling is all that because they benefit from that as if you're the employee and you're hustling. But then there's the flip side as well in terms of like, oh, it's like someone's trying to be, I don't know if this slang is still in popular usage, but I've heard it before at times, like, oh, he's trying to be extra. Like, and that's not cool. It's not cool to try to be extra, or another word for ambitious. And yet, one of my favorite Onion articles, we'll link in the show notes, headline, man's utter failure in life, a bit of a sore spot. And so I was like, haha, and that's the joke. It's like, of course it's a sore spot. And so we've got all these conflicting messages from the outside, as well as I'm thinking about in my own world, I studied finance in college. And so we learned very firmly that the sacred duty of the firm is to maximize shareholder wealth. And so now as I'm doing my own business thing, it's like that idea was just in there. And it was kind of a revelation. It's like, no, Pete, you can see an opportunity to go get money and just not do it because you don't want to. That's okay. It was like, wait, it is? And yet, if it was a different context, like if I were the CEO of a publicly traded company, that I kind of do have a legal duty to go after that and could get sued if I don't. So, yeah. It's quite easy to get all mixed up on this subject, Kathy.
It really is. I mean, I studied undergraduate finance as well. So this is in my brain. I have an MBA as well. So yeah, I mean, and I think what we all can benefit from remembering is we humans live amongst constructs. We make up these constructs. Yes, sometimes there's math and science behind them, but there's one person who determined that. Why does a firm exist? To maximize shareholder value? Well, there were other constructs before Milton Friedman said that as to why firms existed and how firms got ran. And so we can challenge some of these norms around, well, how do we define success? How do we define what ambition is? And I think that's where I'm inviting people to really reclaim that and to determine what is work and what is worthy work and what is worthy of your effort. And I think in today's culture and society, we often think it has to be tied specifically to monetization. And so much, you brought up technology companies, so much of this world of like social media, we kind of are called into, we need to monetize ourselves. And so this is an invitation to also kind of say, how do you want to define work for yourself? And yes, work that is your professional life is important, but there can also be other aspects of work that can really be soul-filling and keep you sustained as well, and can be important parts of who you are and can really create, allow you to have more holistic ambitions than just think that our ambitions are solely about our professional life, which I think is something that people also get wrong about ambition.
Yeah, you're right. And it's fascinating. And now I'm thinking, this is so dorky, Kathy, but what comes to mind is one of my all-time favorite games that's really shaped the way I think about the world and resources was from 1992 called Master of Orion. And it's, you try to conquer the galaxy with your alien race and do resource management and yada, yada. And so I just thought it's the coolest game, and sometimes I'll still play it. And I just learned that this guy, his name is Ray Fowler, just decided that, yes, this game is fantastic and the new generations need to know about it. And so he just created by himself and with collaborators that he hired with his own money to create a whole new version of this for the modern era called Remnants of the Precursors, and just gave it away for free. He just spent multiple years of his life making this thing because he thought, you know what, this is an amazing game and the world needs to know about it and not be turned off by the old graphics or interface or whatever. And so I'm just going to do that. And it's just free. And it's fascinating because there's some ambition and there's no money whatsoever. And his motivations, as far as I could tell, I've tried to stalk him and and learn, is just that, no, this is an amazing game and the world should know about it. So I'm just going to make that possible. And he went and did it. And we're enriched for him having done so. And we can all do that. We have permission to do so. And he seems quite pleased that he made that choice.
I love that. And that's what I would call a right ambition, right? It's something that for him is personally rewarding and satisfying, I would imagine, and he felt was worthy of his effort. And, I think more of us do this more often than we probably realize and recognize. And I think what's important is acknowledging that and claiming that as something that is really worthy of your time and your effort. And somebody who I interviewed on my podcast, we really went into this distinction between paid work versus non-paid work. And I, even for myself, have thought about my own work in this context and really struggled because people asked me, well, why do you call that your paid work versus this is what I would call my service work or my creative work? And perhaps only because I was asked, I was kind of like, maybe I shouldn't be calling it that. But, in this conversation with this guest, it really became for her this distinction between saying it's paid versus non-paid work really allowed that non-paid work to be on equal footing with her paid work. It serves her and it fulfills her and satisfies her and frankly sustains her so greatly that is just as valid and just as important in her life to be putting her time and attention to those activities.
Oh, yes, well said. Because if it's not work, is it a, quote, distraction or a hobby? The other words we have available to describe such things are a bit diminutive. And well, of course, that's not as important as your job. That is of utmost importance. So there is some handy language pieces there, which I appreciate. And I also want to talk about ambition in and of itself. There are some negative connotations. There's some positive connotations. But as I think of other words that are virtues, that we could all just kind of agree that, that it's a good thing to be fair or kind or patient or humble. And of course, you could take these to some extremes, and that might be not ideal. But how do you think about the word ambition and what makes it good or bad or virtuous, and you use the word right and wrong a lot. Can you unpack a little bit of that?
Yes. Let me start with the last thing you said, because I think this is really important to distinguish. I talk about in my sustainable ambition method that really where I'm pointing people is to find more sustainability by aligning the right ambitions at the right time with the right effort. And what's really important about using that term right is that actually I don't think that there's necessarily a wrong. It's that right is making sure that it's right for you.
But it could also be wrong for you if it's not right for you.
Perhaps that's fair. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good pushback. Yeah. I mean, and I think that the distinction and what I appreciate about you, what you just said was this is individual. It's personalized. And I think where I'm trying to point people or where I am pointing people is to, for a lot of our lives, we are influenced by external factors, by social norms, and these things guide us. But I'm calling people to step into a self-authored mind and starting to say, what do I want for myself? How do I step into what I want and make this personal? And so I appreciate what you just said, Pete, which is it's wrong in terms of what's personal for me, meaning like I'm going after a should as opposed to something that's not aligned to who I am and what I really want for myself. So I think that's how I think about that context. I also think that ambition is good. It is what motivates us to shape the things that we want for ourselves in our lives and what we want for the world. And it's what pulls us forward. But it can also, I talk about this idea that there's a U curve of ambition, similar to the U curve of performance, where if your ambition is too low, you can get into this, what I call stagnant zone. If your ambition is too high and you're driving hard all the time, or you're in this unproductive sense of striving, you can get into this severe zone. And so it really is about, well, how do I dial in my ambition to be kind of the right level so that it is sustainable for myself? So I guess that's how I think about it in terms of this context of like, well, how do you dial it in to be just right for you?
Mm-hmm. Now, when you say U curve, I'm already imagining I have axes and I have a U. Can you go into some depth here?
Sure. So on the y-axis is sustainability from low to high. And on the x-axis is ambition from low to high. So if you're low ambition and low sustainability, you're going to be in the stagnant zone. If you're in the middle around the right level of ambition, you're going to be in the optimal, sustainable ambition zone. And then if your ambition is too high, you're starting to get into this area of, okay, now my sustainability is starting to come down because I'm really, perhaps either I'm not aligned to what my ambitions are, I'm too externally focused, or I'm really in this sense of unproductive striving where I'm really just driving hard all the time. I'm not taking breaks. I'm not prioritizing other aspects of my life that are important to me, that matter, that also help keep me sustained. So that's how I think about that.
Okay. Well, so as you describe this, sort of sounds like a lowercase n as opposed to a u, if that's the curve of the, as we follow. Is that accurate? The optimal would be a medium-ish level of ambition, which is maximally sustainable.
Yeah, the optimal level is like in the middle, if that's what you're describing. But the U is kind of an upside down U. So that's why you're saying, that's what you're saying. And yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. That's what I'm saying. All right. Okay, cool. All right. So there we have it. So we have an upside down U, or lowercase n, if you will, curve with the optimal level of ambition for sustainability being somewhere in the middle. And that makes sense because if you're going minimally, life is kind of whatever. It's kind of depressing. And if you're going to the max, it's like this is exhausting and anxiety provoking and crazy town. Not a great place to be. So I hear what you're saying is that midpoint of ambition in the optimal is sustainable because it's sort of like you're challenged. It's fun and interesting, but you're not overwhelmed and you're not bored. This kind of reminds me of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's perspective on flow with kind of any given challenge of the moment that you're in.
Right. And if you start to get into where that challenge is overly stressful, right, it starts to also take you not into that optimal sense of flow, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you had a great thing you said earlier about not going after a should, which would just be the sort of like the socialized perspective of whatever people say just is the thing to do. Like, oh, you should do that. And I always, I've been criticized for taking things super literally at times, but like with your you and your in. But when people say should, it's interesting. They could say to all sorts of things like, oh, I should really get back into whatever TV show or game or thing. And I often will directly challenge them. It's like, should you really? Would that be optimal for you? It's like, I mean, probably not. No, I'll just continue not watching that show. And that's probably actually the right choice for me. Cool, thanks. So can you unpack a little bit? What is right ambition, right time, and right effort?
So right ambition is, again, I talked about redefining success based on your own terms. And so this is really about shifting from looking at that external lens and starting to say, what is going to be personally rewarding to me? And it's starting to look at what you want to do. So again, it's shifting from that external to internal motivation and really getting clear on what internally motivates you. I point to 4 different areas in the book around this. What's your vision? How do you like to give or contribute? Which a more common lexicon that gets used these days is purpose. I look at values and then also what you love to do or intrinsic motivators. And so that's really about how do you motivate your effort around what you're pursuing? Right time is about considering your life and work together and is focused on choosing, well, where do you want to put your attention, your effort, your energy based on really what's personally important and matters most in your life and work now. And so this is shifting a mindset from doing it all to really focusing on doing what matters and helping you focus your effort. And then finally, right effort is about really being discerning about the level of effort you're putting towards your ambitions and goals rather than just thinking you should be putting a ton of effort into everything. Ambition is often tied to this idea that it's like maximum effort. But then it's also being discerning about how am I really managing my effort and my energy so that I do keep myself sustained over time. So this is really about managing your effort and energy, shifting from constant drive to really being more strategic about how you manage your effort.
Now, you said right time was about doing what matters. Could you help me distinguish all the more clearly? That kind of sounds like right ambition. If it's in conjunction, if it's working with my vision, values, and what I love to do, isn't what's right time?
No, this is great. Yeah. So those two things work together, right? In terms of like, so right ambition is like, okay, well, how do I ascertain like how I either define success on my own terms or defining my goals and even checking, like, are these things that I truly want to do? Right time is about, okay, great. If I think about my vision for my life, I might say, I'll take a very simple one that is, I've had an ambition or goal that I've wanted to do all my life, which is to live abroad for an extended period of time. I have not been able to make that happen in my life. So, right time is really about, well, what is most important now? How do I think about both what do I have energy for now and what really is urgent for me to pursue at this moment in my life? What is my life context or what am I being called to do right now such that I'm making this a priority in terms of what's important in my life at this moment in time? So these two things do work together, but I invite people into, well, how do you think about your life in arcs and periods and thinking about horizons? And how do you think about what really is important now in this moment? And what might you shift out to different time periods? What might you say, like, okay, this isn't a priority right now. I actually am going to put this on the back burner for now and allow myself to focus my attention on what matters to me at this moment.
Okay, understood. So given the season and the context of what's up, it will vary.
And your stage of life as well.
Understood. Okay. Well, let's talk about the right level of effort. What are some of the telltale signs that our effort is too little or too much?
I think in terms of if our effort is too little, it could be that you yourself are feeling like you're stagnating, right? That you're not making progress, the kind of progress that you want to see. It could be that, again, it goes back to the first thing I said, like, what is your energy level? But like, even if your effort isn't the right level of effort, that may start to bring into question, like, is this the right ambition for you at this time? So checking in with your energy level and whether or not you're putting enough energy into something is a really great clue as to whether or not you're motivated around pursuing something or not. I think on the other side, in the other extreme, in terms of are you putting too much effort into something, is do you start to feel like you are ignoring certain things in your life that really matter to you and are important to you? Do you feel like you're constantly driving hard all the time and you're never taking breaks? Are you starting to feel, are there physical symptoms that you might not be operating at your best? Are you starting to have health problems that are giving you clues that you are potentially putting too much effort into all that you are trying to do? So there are a number of different signals that you can be looking for in terms of this sense of, am I putting a little too much effort? It can start to become like these signals that can be associated with workaholism. And there's different factors around workaholism that can start to show up, which are not just behavioral. They can be psychological. They can be biological as well in terms of these health aspects too.
And what about those tricky situations where it's like, I really want the results and outcomes of a thing, but I really just don't like doing the work to get there. For some people, that might be in the fitness zone. That could be in the business, career, finance zone. What do we do with these matters?
There's a couple of different ways that one can manage this, right? Like, so one is this something that, in terms of pursuing a goal, something that you don't really enjoy doing? Is it something that you yourself have to do, or is it something that you can outsource, right? And where you can get help and support so that it's like, well, this isn't my zone of genius. So as this part of this ambition or goal, I'm going to hire out or have somebody help me achieve some of these aspects of what I'm trying to pursue that can actually help me reach that goal. That is a possibility depending on what the ambition and the goal is. Then there's the other side, which is sometimes these are things that we have to do ourselves. I've experienced this too. And I think you have to question, well, how committed are you to that ambition and goal? And how much do you want that result? So that's one way of going at it, which is, okay, I am really committed. This is going to be the way that I'm going to pursue it. I'm going to go ahead and do some of these things that I don't love because I really want to achieve that goal. I think the middle way is to challenge like whether or not you need to be doing the specific thing that we think we need to do in order to achieve that goal, and whether or not there's a middle way that one can find that is actually better aligned to who you are and what your values are. Is there, sometimes again, it's kind of like, well, this is the external norm of how something is achieved, but is there actually a way that I can achieve the same outcome and the same results and do it in a way that is better aligned to who I am?
Can you give us some fun examples of folks who have done just that?
I would say that one of the examples is I'm thinking about somebody who is like, she has grown her business and she's not on social media. And I think the norm these days is, hey, I need to be on social media and I need to be building a significant following. And she has taken a completely different approach that is much more aligned to who she is in terms of building a following through an email newsletter and through offering really valuable content. And that approach has worked for her, and also through building relationships. And so I think that we often see examples or think that there's only one way to go about achieving a goal. And yet, there are ways to realign towards something that is better aligned to oneself. I'll say even on this around my book, I would say I'm not a huge fan of social media either. And so a way that I am going about this that is much more resonant for me is to what I want to be doing is talking about this topic as well as connecting with people and partnering with people to get this message out. And that's a way that I am approaching this in a way that is much more resonant and aligned with my personal values.
Yes, that's lovely. I've experienced that. People say, well, you got to get on Twitter. You got to do all the things. And there are numerous counterexamples. I'm thinking about Cal Newport, famously just doesn't do much on social media. His books are doing great, and that works just fine for him. So that is a fine thought to challenge the conventional wisdom, although to perhaps also be cautious not to fall for, snake oil, get rich quick, the ab belt, which does your workout for you, kinds of things that promises of low effort results are often misleading. So I guess maybe that's a distinction to draw there.
I think that's important. One of the things that I talk about with sustainable ambition too, which may surprise people, is I believe in hard work. I think it's just being really discerning about where do you want to put in that hard work, and also being really discerning about how are you going to sustain yourself in the process. And so I think that people may be naive in thinking that, there are these get rich quick kind of schemes, but I think like even something like create a digital course or get on social media or do these various things that I think are quite common are often posed as being that you can have this immediate success, but that's often not the case.
That indeed it is. So when it comes to being sustainable, taking care of ourselves, resting, recovering, rejuvenating, do you have any pro tips on how you think about how much time we spend doing that? And or if there is any research-backed approaches that are phenomenally efficient and effective at giving us rest, recovery, rejuvenation with a relatively modest investment of our time and other resources?
I think what's really important here is a couple of principles. One is to think about sustainability on different timeframes. And I think what can help people is to make sure that it sounds so simple, but the problem is people don't do it, which is to think about sustainability on a longer time horizon. I think why people can often get tripped up with work-life balance and that concept is that they think that, oh, I'm supposed to be in balance all of the time. And yet, again, there's going to be intense time periods. And that's a reality of life and how our life and work together. And so are you thinking about a broader time horizon, 12 to 18 months, and kind of ascertaining when am I going to take those downtimes and when am I going to give myself those breaks so that I can keep myself sustained over time? And then in the opposite direction, I would say, I think where people can get this wrong is thinking that they need to make all these big gestures in order to keep themselves sustained over time. And what I really advocate, and again, it's quite simple, which is like, make sure you're taking small breaks regularly. And the problem is that most of us don't take those breaks. And so research by Slack a couple of years ago found that about 50% of knowledge workers around the globe don't take breaks during the day.
Oh, wow. So they would know. Slack. They can tell you're slacking nonstop, guys.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And some people challenge me on that. Like, people probably are taking breaks, but, often, they're checking email or they're looking at social media or they're checking their Slack, right? It's not necessarily really getting themselves that psychological detachment that they need from work. And so I think it's being really discerning again about how am I taking these breaks, and things like a 5-minute walk outside, 5 minutes of deep breathing, being in nature, going and talking with a friend, 5 minutes of daydreaming are all these things that are quite simple to do and don't have to take a lot of time, and yet really can help us reduce our stress in the moment and keep us sustained for a longer period of time.
Okay. Well, I love these. And then you can get as wild and weird and unique as you want to with whatever you're up to there. And with these 5-minute breaks, I imagine there's going to be some variation person to person, but do you have a range of just how many or how often are these 5-minute breaks optimal for folks?
Well, I'm going to borrow from a colleague, John Briggs, who wrote a book called The 3x3 Rule, which is based on some science that he has rooted in his book, which is this idea that we really shouldn't work more than 3 hours at a time. And there's different studies out there. That's a maximum, but there's different studies out there around like the optimal amount of time that one should work. But what his other 3x3 rule is about this, like for whatever amount of time you work, take a 30% break after it. And so that you can use that to kind of have as a gauge in terms of how often one should be taking a break. So no more than 3 hours and then taking an appropriate amount of break after that. Personally, one of my greatest tools that I really pay attention to and use myself is just really being tuned into my own personal feelings and my energy. And I kind of follow my energy in terms of paying attention to when am I starting to get distracted? When am I starting to lose focus? And that's typically a clue for me that I'm ready for a break.
All right. Well, Kathy, tell me any final do's, don'ts, tips, tricks before we hear about your favorite things.
I think sustainability really lives in being aligned to who we are. So get to know yourself. The other is to pay attention. Things change on us. And oftentimes part of what causes that angst that I talked about earlier, Pete, is that, we're thrown off when things change on us. And I think that we often need to start to plant seeds and start to try new things much earlier than we realize. And so paying attention, starting to lean into curiosity, try new things. And then the final thing I'll say is to remember that this is a practice. Oftentimes people can be hard on themselves when things start to go off track. And that's a reality, and also helps us start to understand where are the boundaries around how do we want to define sustainability for ourselves. So I encourage people to just embrace the practice of it all and learn along the way.
Big thanks to Kathy for sharing wisdom with us, and big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsor to check out is Plod. Plod is an AI wearable gadget that takes notes of meetings and calls. With Plod, you don't have to take notes and make summaries anymore. It'll do it for you. This tiny AI gadget is the perfect accessory for your phone. It takes notes, instantly generates transcripts, summarizes critical points and action items, so you can stay focused without frantic note-taking. Personally, I was really impressed with my Plod. It's about the size of 2 credit cards stacked on top of each other, super tiny. The setup and Bluetooth pairing was about the quickest, most seamless setup of a device with its app that I've ever experienced. And I was really impressed at how a device this tiny has acceptable audio quality and battery life. Their transcriptions I found were super accurate and the AI insights were sensible. So you talk and Plod handles the rest. If you're ready to work smarter, type PLAUD into Google and get a discount with my code AWESOME. That's PLAUD. One sponsored checkout is Strawberry.me Career Coaching. Having real clarity and direction can make or break your career. If it seems like you're putting in the work but not seeing your career take off, some coaching might be just the ticket. Strawberry.me matches you with certified career coaches who help you gain clarity on what you really want next in your career, develop a results-driven strategy, and stay accountable. And they can also help you flourish beyond career issues. I had a fantastic session with my coach, Brett, about handling stress from so many responsibilities in so many areas. He was fun. He was wise. He just really got me. We had some laughs and a good time and a good rapport. And he gave me an exercise that has been so quick and so effective for me. I've been doing it every day. So if you're ready to take control and build momentum in your career, go to strawberry.me/awesome to claim your $50 credit. That's strawberry.me/awesome. Because awesome careers don't just happen, you make them happen. One sponsor to check out is Rula. I'm a huge believer in therapy and have personally benefited greatly from many online sessions. Unfortunately, many folks looking for therapy can have a really hard time finding a solid therapist, and when they do, that person might not take their insurance. So frustrating. Rula does it differently. They partner with over 100 insurance plans, making the average copay only $15 per session. On top of that, Rula goes deep, considering your goals, preferences, and background to provide you with a curated list of licensed in-network therapists and psychiatrists on target therapy and medication. No wait lists or any of those headaches. Thousands of people are already using Rula to get affordable, high-quality therapy that's actually covered by their insurance. Visit Rula.com/awesome to get started. And after you sign up, they'll ask you how you heard about them. Please let them know How to Be Awesome at Your Job sent you by going to Rula, RULA.com/awesome. You deserve mental health care that works with you, not against your budget. Okay. Well, now can you share with us a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
Yes, this is from Benedictine monk brother David Steindl-Rast, where he said, "The antidote to exhaustion is not necessarily rest. The antidote to exhaustion is wholeheartedness."
And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
One of mine is from Sonia Libersky and Laura King, which talks about how if we focus on putting our attention on personal success linked to fulfillment, satisfaction, and happiness, that is more likely to lead to external success than necessarily the other way around. So if we are just focused on external success, that is not going to necessarily lead to us being happy. But if we focus on what the studies have shown generally is that if we focus instead on what's really meaningful and motivating to us first, it's more likely that external success is going to follow.
All right. And a favorite book?
One is called What You're Looking For Is in the Library. It's a novel by Michiko Aoyama. And then the second is the Monk and Robot books by Becky Chambers. One is called A Psalm for the Wild Built, and the other is A Prayer for the Crown Shy. And I just love these for the philosophical questions that they pose that are, for me, squarely centered around sustainable ambition.
Okay. And is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with your clients?
It's not sustainable if it isn't yours.
Can you elaborate?
Well, it's really this idea that, again, sustainability is rooted in what's personally motivating to you and what really matters to you. And so if you're pursuing things that are external from you, that are a should, are what others want for you, are what society says, at some point, we often reject that and it's not sustainable.
All right. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where'd you point them?
They can find me at my website, sustainableambition.com, on LinkedIn, and on my podcast, Sustainable Ambition, on their favorite podcast player.
All right. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for someone looking to be awesome at their jobs?
I just shared this a little bit earlier, but I'll reiterate it, which is to really pay attention to how you're feeling. And again, to be curious and look ahead and start to think about what might be next much sooner than you think. So always be learning, always be experimenting, always be taking good risk.
All right. Kathy, thank you.
Thank you so much, Pete.
Boy, I really love what Kathy has to say about ambition and just thinking about how do we feel about it and what kind of judgments are we making about ourselves and others? Are we too ambitious? Are we not ambitious enough? And why? And is that valid? And where's that coming from? Whew, I think that is well worth some good reflection such that we can be kinder to ourselves and or others and dial in what is in fact the right ambition for right now and the right effort. Great stuff from Kathy. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP1075. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Wealthfront. With the Wealthfront Cash Account, you could earn 4.25% APY through partner banks and get free same-day withdrawals to eligible accounts when you initiate by 9 p.m. Eastern. Save and invest at wealthfront.com. Cash account is offered by Wealthfront Brokerage, member FINRA/SIPC. Wealthfront Brokerage isn't a bank. Funds are conveyed to partner banks who accept and maintain deposits and provide the interest rate and FDIC insurance. Rate is subject to change.